Okay, welcome to Faith and Calm. This is episode 85. And tonight we're going to talk about the stories that the Hanukkah candles tell you, because the Frierdiker Lubavitcher Rebbe said that, our custom is to stay sitting by the Hanukkah candles for yeah, to stay sitting by the Hanukkah candles for half an hour and to watch them. So he says you have to listen to the lights, sort of a synthonesia activity. You listen to what the candles are telling you. So we're going to tell some stories. That was the custom in Chabad, especially on the fifth night of Hanukkah, to tell stories. And I'm going to start out the stories with a question, because having a question always motivates the interest in the stories. So here's a couple of Hanukkah stories. So there is a famous, I think, 15th century rabbi, the Rokeach. Probably never heard of him, but he's fairly famous. And he pointed out that on Hanukkah, we light 36 candles. If you count one and then two and then three, and not counting the shamas, over the whole 8 days, it's 36 candles. He says 36, that's an interesting number. Where do we have other idea of 36? Well, in the beginning of the Torah, it says that there was morning and there was evening the first day. There was morning and there was evening the second day. And then all of a sudden on the fourth day, it says, oh, and God created the sun and the moon and the stars. And everybody goes, what? Where was the morning and the evening? The sun wasn't there, so what are we talking about, morning or evening? So the Gemara famously states that it says, oh, there was a different light. The different light that was the first 4 days. It was a light that God saw that light was too good. And so after the first week, he hid that light away. It was just too powerful, too great a light, which of course raises the question, well, why'd you create it in the first place? If it's too good, then God had to hide it away. Well, he's going to bring it back in time of Mashiach. But that doesn't answer the question. Oh, the Zohar says that it's you can find it's still that light. It's the light that you can see from one end of the universe to the other, and it's hidden in the Torah. That still doesn't answer the question. And then you have this other interesting tidbit of information, which is that when Adam and Chava were created on Friday, that light still was shining. In fact, that light went all Friday day and then all Friday night and then all Saturday day, because God didn't want to leave them in the dark until Saturday night, which is why we do Havdalah, because we light a candle because they were scared the first time it was actually dark. So that Friday night and Friday day adds up to 36. That was the light that's shown during the first days of creation. That light is hidden today in some way in the Hanukkah candles. How's that answer the question? What's the connection between 36 hours of the first night of Hanukkah, the first day of creation, and the light of the Hanukkah candles? And we're going to find out what the light of the Hanukkah candles and what's so special about them. But first, we're going to ask another little question, which is, why did the rabbis jump on this idea of the Hanukkah menorah and the menorah and finding the oil? Why was that such the main thing? Yeah, they talk about the miracle of the victory, which you would think was the main thing, because if they didn't win against the Greeks, what would be with the Jews today? But the rabbi said, no, the oil, that's the main thing, that it lasted for 8 days. Why is that such a big thing? I mean, they could have waited. They didn't have the menorah for many, many years. The Greeks that completed that defiled the temple. They had no oil. You could wait. You could have waited. They didn't have to light it right away when they first found it. They only found 1 day anyway. So what was good? It was going to go out anyway after a day. Why did they light it? There's a joke. There was a Jewish comedian in the 1700s. His name was Herschel Ostoparola. And he has many funny little stories. And one of the things that he was going from house to house begging for food one time. And he went to the first house and he said, can you give some food? And they said, you can go to the synagogue. They give food there. He says, if you don't give me food, he threatens, I'm going to do what my father did. So they got scared and they gave him food. Then he went to the next house and he said, I need money. And they says, money, there's a charity fund. And he says, if you don't give me a big donation, I'm going to do what my father did. And he goes from house to house like this. And then finally, one house, they ask him, so what did your father do? Because my father would go hungry. Start with the show. So the question is, what difference does it make? It would have been anyway. It was not going to happen. You wait 8 days. It's a big, it's like waiting for your house to be renovated. You can wait 8 days. It takes a little longer. So the answer to all of this is going to be through a couple stories. The first one I think I told you once before, but I heard it again and it's a good story. The story goes as follows. Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson, once a lady, wrote him an email, a lady from Brooklyn, and she said she just got back from Israel and she wanted to tell the experience that she had in Israel. She went to a place called the Museum of the Blind in Tel Aviv. And this museum is a very interesting museum. They try and give you the experience of what it's like to be a blind person. And you go in as a group, like 6, 7 people, and they have a tour guide, and you go from room that's completely black to black to black. And you have different experiences, some music, some sounds, some other kinds of stuff, but you have to be led by a guide because you can't see. The guides are blind themselves. And so this blind guide was leading them through room to room to room. And the lady writing in the email says, I was just so impressed with this person. Not only was he smart and wise, he had a certain sensitivity, a depth to him. She just went on and on and on explaining how, he had a wisdom, he had a sensitivity, a kindness, it was an amazing person, just to listen to him as he took them from room to room. The second to last room that they had to go to was sort of like an outdoor market where they had to pick food for the last room where they would sit down, the lunchroom, and eat. So there they had to go and they had to pick the food, but it was black. So there was nothing you couldn't see. So you're feeling and you're smelling and, and you're putting your fingers in different kinds of things. Oranges is not so bad, but if it's wet and sticky, you probably didn't like that at all. And, she really got the experience of what it was like to be blind. And then they went to the lunchroom and it was also dark there. And she's sitting and the tour guide says to her, he says, how come you're so tense? She says, how can you tell I'm tense? It's pitch black in here. You're blind. What do you see? He says, you can sense people, what they are, what's going on with them. And she says, how come most people can't? He says, it's when God takes away one of your senses, you develop other senses. And then the lights went on. And she writes in the email, she says she was horrified. She was horrified at her reaction. Because when she looked at him, she was almost nauseated by how deformed he was. He was born blind, but it wasn't only blind. I mean, his eyes were misshapen, his teeth, his tongue, much of his body. He had a lot of physical ailments, and she really had a really difficult time actually looking at this person. And then she realized, she said, I couldn't really see this guy until I closed my eyes. When I closed my eyes, then I could see him again. But when I looked at him with my eyes, that was when I had this trouble. And that is really the lesson here that we're trying to explain, that they're seeing and then they're seeing. There's light and there's light that you perceive the inner reality of stuff, and then there's light that that you just see things on the surface. And we all know this. We do have to understand it, that much of what we see and much of what we take in the world, we take on a very superficial level. If you had a microscope, you would see that these walls and the computer and the table and everything else is a massive moving electrons and protons and atoms and combinations. And the scientists will tell you that's the real reality, because if you could actually compress it, you'd see it's mostly space. What you think is solid is not solid at all. It's moving, it's action. There's all sorts of stuff going on. And the same thing is a musician who says, who looks at a musical score with all the notes will tell you, some people will see music and they'll start humming, and other people will just see a bunch of black squiggly marks because they're seeing and they're seeing. There's different kinds of light. The light that was of the Hanukkah candles, the light of the light that you could see from one end of the world to the other, which was hidden away for the time of Mashiach. That light to perceive what the real reality of the world is hidden to us because we mostly take things on a superficial level. But it's available. It's available, and tzaddikim and other people who train themselves to clean to use Oscar Wilde's terms, to clean the doors of perception. You can see the real reality of what's going on in the world. But you have to work it yourself. You have to work to look beyond the surface understanding. But that is the real reality. Real reality, if we were given the ability, we would see this world as godliness. We would see this world as a holy place. We would not see it that way. And the Hanukkah candles gives us a little bit of that light, the light to be able to see. And now give me a couple of those stories to illustrate that. So there was a rabbi. He was the grandson of the Baal Shem Tov. His name was Borach of Mezevich. Borach of Mezevich once went to go see one of the students of his grandfather, of the Baal Shem Tov. This guy's name was Zev Wolf of Zitomir. Lots of names. The more Enayim. He actually had passed away, so he was going to see his widow, his wife. He went to Zitomir, and when he came to that town, he saw a man, and he told his gabbai, he says, bring that man over him. I want to talk to him. He asked the guy, he says, do you have by any chance a son who's of marriageable age? And he says, yes. He says, I have a daughter who needs to be married. Maybe we'll make a shidduch. And the gabbai says, wait, don't do it with this guy. This guy, he's the town's thief. You don't want to have anything to do with this guy. In fact, there was an incident a couple of years ago here where he was caught stealing, and the governor, the non-Jewish governor, had the custom, they would take the thief through the streets, and everybody, the non-Jews, the Jews, would make fun of him and throw rocks at him and so forth like that. This is the guy, he's not supposed to marry your daughter, your son. So he says, no, I want to marry. And they sign the agreement. And everybody in the town is wondering, why is he signing? Why is he doing this? And then he goes to the widow of Zev Wolf, and she says Mazel Tov, and he says, "You're the only one who thinks it's a Mazel Tov. Why are you saying it's Mazel Tov?" And she says, "Well, my husband told me," said many years ago when this guy was being led through the streets, said he's not a thief. And I asked him, I said, "How do you know he's not a thief?" And she says, "I know what the story is. There is a thief. There's a Jewish guy, and he got caught. And he knew that what was going to happen to him would be very embarrassing and he wouldn't live through it. So this guy said, I'm very confident in myself. I won't get found. I won't be disturbed by it. And I will volunteer to be the thief." And so this guy is not the thief. So the wife asks, Zev Wolf, and says, "And what's going to happen?" He says, "Well, you'll see. And in a couple of years, a very holy man is going to be able to see through the thing, and he's going to make a marriage with his kid's son." And that is indeed what you did. So I know that you see the inner person inside that person. It says about Helen Keller, who also was blind, she said, there's one thing worse than being blind, and that's having no vision. Because as you know, there's seeing and then there's vision. She also said another interesting thing. One time a person was walking through the forest and they came back, and Helen Keller asked this person, said, "So how was it?" And this person said, "Nothing much. Nothing exciting happened." She says, "Really? How can that be? You were there. There were birds. There was wind. There was trees. There was stuff going on. How can you just gloss over what's reality, what's happening?" Helen Keller was sensitive. She sensed that there was much more going on. They tell a story also about Thomas Edison. You ever heard the story? I don't think I've ever told this one. So I remember reading Thomas Edison's autobiography once. So Thomas Edison, when he was 8 years old, he was expelled from school, and he came home with a note from his principal. And in the note, he showed that he was supposed to show the note to his mother. So the mother opens the note, and she says, "You know what, Thomas, and what it says here?" He says, "No." He says, "You know why you were expelled?" He says, "No." He says, "Well, the principal here writes," and excuse my language, but he says, "You are a freaking genius, and they just don't know how to deal with you. They don't know what to do. They don't have teachers for you," and so forth. So the principal is asking, "Can you please just homeschool this kid? Because we don't know what to do about this. Maybe you or your husband or somebody will be able to teach him." And of course, Thomas Edison turned out to be Thomas Edison. I mean, we have the internet and all this electricity because of him. Many years later, his mother passed away, and after the funeral, Thomas Edison went back to his mother's home and was cleaning it up, and he found the original note. He opened up the note. You know what the note said? The note said this: "Your son is addled." Addled. It's not a common word you hear anymore. Addled.
Addled brain.
He's basically retarded, you know, he's hopeless, you know, he's not gonna ever, and we don't know what to do with him. And Thomas Edison realized, you see, my mother actually, she read the note right. She just read the inner message. She saw the light. What the principle really was missing in the whole story. When you look at people, you have to realize, you know, you have to be able to see that inner light. We see too much the outer surface stuff, and that's what the Chanukah candles are about. It's about teaching you about the inner message, the inner light, the inner story that's going on, and what's going on in the story. And this is also the famous story with, I never told this, I'm sure, before, was Rebbe Rashab. The Rebbe Rashab was the fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe, and there was a diamond merchant who was a chassid of his. His name was Moshe Monosov. Moshe Monosov was not only a rich diamond merchant, but he was also a very refined person and a big Torah scholar. He was a good person. And every year he used to come to the Rebbe Rashab, the fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe, and he would bring one of his best diamonds that he had for that year. And he said, "This is my donation to the Rebbe's causes for this year." He would bring a diamond. So one year he came to Lubavitch, and he was waiting there. He was waiting in line, and there was a guy who went in front of him, and that guy was just a very simple person, not knowledgeable, not a scholar, nothing special about it. And the Rebbe Rashab spent a lot of time with him. And then when Moshe Monosov went in, it was a very short meeting, very quick. And he didn't say anything, but he felt slighted. He said, why does he get so much time and I didn't? That's what he was thinking. He didn't say anything to anybody, but that's what he was thinking. A day later, he goes in and he shows the Rebbe Rashab the diamond. The Rebbe Rashab takes a look, and he starts looking at the stone, and he's examining it, and he says, "Don't see anything special." But Rebbe Monosov says, "Rebbe, you have to know how to measure a diamond. I mean, there's the clarity, and there's the sparkle, and there's the facets." And he starts explaining all the details. You go to a gemologist, they'll tell you all these things, the color, the size, the grade A, and all this other kinds of stuff. But Rebbe Rashab looks at the stone, and he says, I don't see anything. And he says, "It goes, explain some more." And then finally, the Rebbe said, "I don't see anything special." The Monosov says, "Well, Rebbe, to be able to tell what's special, you have to be a maven. And you're not a maven about these stones." The Rebbe Rashab gets a big smile. So he was waiting for it. And he says, "Aha, in order to understand whether a diamond is a special diamond, you have to be a maven. So what about neshamas, souls? You have to be a maven to be able to know which is the diamond. Which is, of course, what his message was. He got the message, and so forth. A Rebbe knows and sees inside and sees the diamonds, and he sees certain people, and everybody else just says it's just an average person, not doing very well. Whatever, and and they see, "Hey, sir, you're a diamond." You're a diamond. And you don't realize it, you just think of yourself, as not a diamond, but you are a diamond. And you need a Rebbe sometimes to be able to see there's a diamond inside there. There's really quite a diamond. And that is the light that's hidden in the Hanukkah candles, that special light, not the light of superficiality, not the light that we just see, but that to see that the material world that we see and what everybody else sees and what they all say on the news every night and all that other kind of stuff, that's not really what's going on. Hanukkah message, the Hanukkah lights is a different kind of light. It's a different type of light. It's it's miraculous light. It goes beyond the cycle of 7. And those Hanukkah lights can illuminate things that are completely dark. And that is what we are doing here. It was the last miracle in the time in the Jews. It comes even after the closing of the Tanakh. It's the end of the age of miracles for the Jews, but that light keeps going. It keeps going in history. In fact, they even thought of stopping it because, the temple was destroyed and they said the rededication is over. And they said, no. The message of Hanukkah, the message of the Hanukkah candles is a message that can go even when the world is cold and dark and rational and doesn't believe in miracles anymore, because there's something special about those Hanukkah candles that can illuminate the night. And that's why we light the Hanukkah candles at the night and we make them go on the outside. And we want people to see on the outside because we're trying to illuminate the rest of the world. Because when you illuminate for other people and you make other people realize their specialness and their diamond and their glow, then it also illuminates in your own life. So I wish everybody a very lichtige Hanukkah. The lights of Hanukkah should continue on for you and for your whole families. And hopefully those stories help a little bit. And we're easy to understand. Thank you very much. And
lovely stories.
Mama Shehudis is here, and it was a Hanukkah party.
Shimon, before you leave, I
Yes?
wanted to say that what was interesting about Hanukkah this year, for me personally, was that I think because we have so much, we don't have all the decorations, we don't have all the other things, Hanukkah is lighting the menorah basically and saying the blessings, that I thought a lot more about the meaning of Hanukkah this year than even in the past, I think. Maybe it's because of COVID, I don't know what it is, but about the miracles and the history behind it. So I thought that relates a little bit to your story of sort of the inner vision of Hanukkah rather than just, the candle lighting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
I hope
you.
it continues for you as well throughout the year.
Have a good week. Have a good week.
Emily, how was it for you this year?
Complicated. Yeah. Complicated.
Complicated.
Okay,
Hi,
so
Shalomis.
does anybody want to say anything before I begin?
Just hi to Sorry, she's leaving.
I wanted to say, your husband's class was so great, but I didn't get a chance to say anything because I'm running around doing my work.
Yes.
Okay.
Did you want to say something?
No, just that
Oh,
I
to
wanted
tell him
you to
that.
tell him.
I'll tell him that.
I feel bad that I never comment, but I'm at work, so.
Okay.
And you look beautiful, and you look like you feel much better.
I do feel much better, thank God.
Thank God. Thank God.
Baruch Hashem.
You're back at school?
I am. Yeah, Baruch Hashem. So I still don't have a complete voice. That's the only thing I don't have. So
I just wanted to say at the very end, or maybe when the recording's up, I wanted to ask you about something, about a book that I happened to pick up that I had some interesting questions about. It's actually a Hanukkah historical fiction that maybe at the end you can
Okay,
indulge
good.
me for
Let's
a couple
do it.
of minutes.
Let's
Yes.
do it. Okay, so Yaskel Shimon spoke about Hanukkah, and I'm going to speak about romance. And
What? I'm sorry.
Romance.
Oh,
Romance.
good.
Okay, good. So I'm also going to speak a little bit. You remember I told you that a couple of weeks ago, my uncle,
Yes.
Yisrael Moshe ben Mordechai, passed away at the age of 100 and a half. And he was quite a remarkable person. As I told you a couple of weeks ago, he sang all the time. And even the day before he passed away, he was singing in the hospital. And he was an interesting person. So, I told you a little bit about him once before when I said that one time I really wanted to go to Israel for a long time. My husband and I, Haskell Shimon and I, always wanted to go for Lag BaOmer, and and it just never seemed to work out. And one year, it was 2003. I was opening the Rebbe's letters about something. I had a question, and I opened the Rebbe's letters, and it said, "Now that you're going to Israel for Lag BaOmer, I want you to be my special representative to spread the light of Chassidus and pay particular attention to the doctor who has so many connections." I told you that part before. And we had no clue who the doctor, every other person in Israel is a doctor. There's a lot of doctors there. So there's a lot of Jews. Makes sense. There's a lot of doctors. And on the plane, the guy sitting next to us, he knew about my uncle. The taxi driver knew about my uncle. Everybody knew my uncle. And when we were staying at my uncle's place, we saw on the wall, oh, I know why everybody knows about him. He was Doctor of the Year in Israel. So anyway, my uncle was not only, my uncle was a big doer, but in addition to being a big doer, he was also a thinker. He liked to think about life. And when I was I told you this too, way before I was religious, he told me, "You could be religious." I said, "Oh, don't say that about me. How could that's a ridiculous thing to say." I don't know.
How old were you then?
I was like 21, something like that.
Mhm.
And I went to Israel many, many times in my life, Baruch Hashem. And I stayed with my uncle and my aunt. And so anyway, one time we got, he just came out with a question and he said, "What do you think is more important, love or duty?" And so, I'm a 21-year-old American. And of course I said love. And he said, "You're wrong. Duty is the most important thing. And it's much more important than love." I thought, oh, what a dry guy that is. And you know what? In the passage of years, maybe even just in the passage of the recent weeks, I really, my uncle was right. My uncle was right. There's no relationship if there is no duty. If you're in a relationship with somebody and you say, "I love you, I love you, I love you," and you never do what they want, you behave in ways opposite of what they want, that is not a relationship. That's zero. That's not a relationship, no matter how much love you feel. And the same thing in our relationship with Hashem. We have all these mitzvahs to do. Those are the things that Hashem enjoys us doing. And we want him to do what we enjoy. And it's a thing, and it's not considered. You can't access a full relationship to Hashem unless you do the mitzvahs, unless you do the stuff that is meaningful to Hashem. So my uncle was right, but my uncle was also, but it's not the whole picture. And I think only Amy doesn't know this at this point. But Amy, did you know I had COVID? Amy, are you listening? Oh, she's not listening. Oh, you're on mute. Okay, so anyway, did you know I had COVID for a few weeks?
No, I did not know that, sweetheart. Forgive me because I got called out for a second. So I'm sorry I missed what you said. So you were sick with COVID. Oh my gosh.
COVID, yeah.
But you're doing much better.
Yeah, thank God. And a couple pounds thinner, but I'm doing much better. And so anyway, during COVID, I started thinking a lot about my relationship with Hashem and my relationship with other people too. And I realized that, I lead a very, very, very busy life. Thank God. It's the only way that I can live life. I have to be very busy because otherwise my Yetzer Hara is huge and it'll just leap on me. So the busier, the better. And much of my life I'm doing for Hashem. I'm teaching Torah in school. I'm busy during the mitzvahs. I learn a lot of Torah. I take Torah classes. I'm busy helping people, doing things like that. And that's duty, and so I have that part of the relationship. But sometimes I'm so busy that I miss the person. I miss the relationship is not fully developed. So when I had COVID, it was a chance for me. Life automatically slowed down dramatically, and I needed Hashem so much. I needed him so much. Life was, I really needed God. And I started I started recapturing my relationship with Hashem. Like when I made brachas, they were different. When I davened in the morning, it was different. And it was not because it's true. Maybe the original impetus was because I needed God so much. But the sustaining impetus was because this is what I wanted. This is what I didn't have fully. And this is what I wanted. I want a relationship. I work so hard for this relationship. I want the sweetness of the relationship. And so during the time of COVID, I began to say, yes, you're in a relationship with somebody, but don't miss the person while you're in the relationship with them. And I think it's true of not only our relationships with Hashem, but also our relationships with each other and with significant people in our lives. We often do a tremendous amount for them, but we look at them superficially, or we think we know them already, and we don't even have a glimmer of the depth and the goodness and the everything else about this person. So I have to say that because of different things that I experienced and I went through, it's an old expression. It's a hackneyed expression, maybe, but I wouldn't sell the 3.5 weeks that I was sick with COVID. I wouldn't sell them for $5 million. I wouldn't do it again for $5 million. No, I don't know, 5 million. Maybe I'll do it. I don't know. It wasn't easy, but I wouldn't sell it. I wouldn't sell that experience. I'm a different person because of it, God willing, and I hope to hold on to it. So I want to say that, okay. So, to a certain extent, I want to slow down enough so that I see the significant people and I make them feel seen. I did that with certain people during this time of COVID. I always think COVID. I make them feel seen. And it's so good for me. It's so important for my students, for everybody else. It's just so important that the other person feels seen. So I want to tell you chronologically, I pulled out every trick in the book during this COVID crisis. And I went through all my stay happy, keep happy techniques. And I needed all of them. And and they all helped me. They all helped me significantly. And I just want to tell you about one day, 10 days ago on Friday. I was at that point, 10 days ago on Friday. Wait, how long have I been? I've only been was back in school all last week.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I was back in school all last week. So it was the Friday before I went back to school. And I still wasn't well enough to go back to school that Friday. I wasn't working yet, but it was so awful for me that I missed 3 weeks of school. I missed, Kislev is the best month of the year for a Torah teacher to teach. There are all these Hasidic holidays. There's the 1st of Kislev, there's the 10th of Kislev, there's the 19th of Kislev. These are huge dates, and I love teaching them. And a lot of this stuff was missing. They weren't going to get it this year. And I felt guilty. I felt so bad. And even though I shouldn't have felt guilty, this is what God planned, And so anyway, by that point, I was already doing all my tricks. One of my tricks was, I call it Sheker of Holiness. I didn't feel so hot that Friday. And I said, I feel terrific. I feel like $1 million. And it helped. It helped tremendously. I also made, I think I made this actually before, but I made a drawing of my plate and Hashem's plate. And on Hashem's plate, this malaise, this illness that's on his plate. The timing of it's lasting longer than I want, but that's his plate. The negative side effects to some of the medications, that's his plate. The good effects of some of those medications, that's his plate. What's on my plate? Being happy, not dancing with my Yetzer. When he suggests something scary, just do something else, ignore him. Focus on my relationship with Hashem, focus on davening, focus on bedtime, because that's my relationship with myself. That's a statement to myself, you count. So much of the time, I don't count in my life. And during this time, I learned, you know what? You count also. Exchanging instead of fear, do something fun. As soon as I felt afraid, I would do something fun or silly. Instead of stress, replace stress by Seder, which means order. And clinging to the Rebbe's blessings. You know, I got blessing. I opened Dikras Kodesh many times. I got the most incredible answers. They were almost all of them were Kislev, the month that we were in. And the Rebbe wrote, you know, it's Kislev. It's the month of Hanukkah. It's all good. You're going to see it's all good. And I even got a letter that said, this is the month of Kislev. Your birthday is in this month, which is absolutely true. You'll see it's all good. So here we are, we're already at my Hebrew birthday, the 22nd of Kislev. And I'm still not well enough to go back. And I'm thinking, hey, I got that letter that said my birthday and I'm still here. So I did one more thing. You know, it was right before the end of my birthday, right before sunset, right before Shabbos sets in. And I had just heard this recently from somebody who told a story about it. And I went over to a picture of the Rebbe and I said in Yiddish, I said, help me, a Rebbe. It means help me, Rebbe. And I have to tell you, within almost immediately, things started clicking. Somebody came to my door with a big package of, these were all notes that my kids wrote to me for Hanukkah and my birthday. And they had written to the Rebbe and they said that they were going to do, and it was so sweet. I started soaring. It was so sweet. And from then on, I steadily, my voice started coming back, Baruch Hashem. And by Monday, I was able to go to the classroom for a shorter period of time, not my full schedule, but a shorter period of time. And I've been there ever since. So I want to tell one little story, and I want to tell one little story. And I just heard it today, and it's about the quality, about the importance of trusting Hashem. And it's based on, there's a medrash that says everything goes according to how much a person hopes to Hashem and trusts Hashem. Everything goes according to that. So even if a person doesn't merit the good things should happen to them, if they hope to Hashem and they trust Hashem, they get it. They get what they need. So many times when we're not answered, especially if we're not answered on a long-term basis, and we've asked so many times, then a person stops believing that they're going to get what they want. And but hope means that no matter how long you've waited, and no matter how many times the door has been closed, and no matter how many times you get what seems to be a no, that you trust Hashem that He is going to help you in this. So this story I just saw it today, heard it, saw it. There was a man who went to his niece's wedding. This niece's wedding was a big occasion of happiness because the niece was single for quite a long time. She was, all her friends were married for a long, long, long time, and she was single while everybody else was married. And if you are an FFB, means you were born into the Torah observant world, then it's doubly painful because you're really an exception to the rule. And so after a very, very long time, she got engaged and she got married, and this uncle went to her wedding, and he stayed for Sheva Brachas. I think everybody knows what Sheva Brachas are, but I'll just say it that for 7 days after the wedding, the bride and groom are hosted at big parties at different people's houses. A big meal is made for them. There's no such concept as a honeymoon in the Torah world because the bride and groom, it's not like they've been living together for 5 years. They love each other before they get married, but they don't know each other so well. So this is like a support structure. They're passed from house to house to house where all the people give speeches about how great it is that they got married. So even if they have cold feet, their feet are kept warm throughout this time. And it's a support structure. It's a beautiful thing. So anyway, the uncle came for the wedding and he stayed for Sheva Brachas. And when he got to one Sheva Bracha, I guess Sheva Brachas have gotten a lot fancier than they were in my time. So I guess a new thing that they do is when you come to a Sheva Brachas have like usually like 10 men, 10 women, and the bride and groom, and it's a big affair. And to be for one family to host, it's a big affair. And so now I guess it's a thing to give out like guest bags, like a welcome bag, you know. And so as he walked in, he saw the guest bags, and somebody gave him one, and he was going to put it aside somewhere. And his niece came up to him and she said, "Hey, listen, this bag is important. Treat it with respect. It's not just any bag." He said, "It's not just any bag. What is it?" She said, "I'm going to tell you." She said, a while ago, another person in the family got married, and one of the relatives called me to ask me if I could make the welcome bags for Sheva Brachas. And I said, sure, because I'm known to, you know, they know, people consider me creative. And so they were really very pretty and very nicely done. And I brought them to the house before the Sheva Brachas. And the person who opened the door said, "Oh my gosh, we asked somebody else. I didn't know that you were asked to. I'm so sorry." And so she didn't make a big deal about it at all. She put in hours and hours and hours. She took her 20 bags that she made, said, "No problem." She went out to her car. She sat in the car. She took out a pen or a marker, and she wrote on each bag, her name was Shandy. She wrote on each bag, "Welcome to Shandy's Sheva Brachas." And, you know, she had no prospects at that point. She put them back in her house. And within a week and a half, somebody suggested the person that would become her husband. And, you know, and she probably was married like 3 months later, 6 months later. Anyway, so she trusted Hashem she said, "You know, I trust you. This is what I need. And you're going to help me. And I'm going to write on the bags, this is for my Sheva Brachas." So anyway, that's my story for tonight. And I want to wish everybody a glorious Motzi post Hanukkah. We should have a very, very lichtige yor. We should have a very light, a year full of light. Now I want to hear what anybody has